Hi there, it's Kevin with RogueDeckBuilder.com here with Soul Sisters. I've had a ton, and I mean a ton of requests for an upgrade on the Soul Sisters now that the ban list is current. Today is the 25th of January. So we'll probably play some games here and see what we're matched up against. But I'm just going to update. This is the list that I've been running to really farm Delver. Now there's a few cards we can just flat out remove now that Delver is out of the format. In the sideboard we can go ahead and remove the core Firewalkers. So that adds up 2 slots. We can actually remove the Terminus. I think I'm going to go back to Wrath of God. Terminus is something that was pretty decent against Pod, as you can get all their Undying or I can't even think of the word. Anyway, all their kitchen finks on the bottom of their library and everything else on the bottom of their library, rather than in their graveyard, or rather than them coming back and putting counters on them. So Terminus can go as well. And again, we could put in some sort of number of Wrath of Gods if we really care about, like Merfolk. Merfolk is the card that Wrath of God is the best against. And it's also not too shabby against the junk mid-range decks. So it probably will add some number in the sideboard. So the first thing, though, is we want the Path to Exiles back in the main board, as they're very good against junk. And I think we're going to go up against junk and Splinter Twin type decks a lot, and so this means that we need to bring over 2 cards into the sideboard, and I think we can safely bring over 2 Auric Champions into the sideboard. This way we can remain 2 in the main board and then in the sideboard. Now, I was going to consider putting the Squadron Hawks back in the format. I'm not 100% sold on Squadron Hawks quite yet. If Squadron Hawks do come back in, then you take another Soul Warden out of the deck, you take a Martyr of the Sands out of the deck, and you move all the Auric Champions over to the sideboard, and that will give you 4 slots for the Squadron Hawks. But as now, unless we see UWR become a huge thing, or the Jund, or junk, even junk, if junk becomes like very big, we can bring back the Squadron Hawks into the main board. So I have 3 slots right now. Let's just talk about what the cards do. Sundering Growth is just an all-around very versatile card. It can kill an affinity card. It can kill any Boggles enchantment. Like sometimes against Boggles, all you need to do is take care of either the Spirit or the Spirit Bonds, I believe is what it is. The one that gives them protection from, not Spirit Bonds, the one that gives them protection from creatures, or you get rid of the Daybreak Coronet or the Ethereal Armor. So those are the three enchantments that really are problematic against Boggles. So Sundering Growth is very good at bringing in against them. That's the same reason why we have Celestial Flare. Celestial Flare can get rid of any sort of Boggles type card. So I am very heavy Boggles in this anti-sideboard. Let me explain what Boggles is. Boggles is just an enchantment-based deck that tries to load up a ton of enchantments on one creature. So cards like Celestial Flare and Pay No Heed just completely wreck Boggles. Pay No Heed is especially brutal against Boggles because it prevents all damage they would deal, but does not prevent the damage dealing back to the Boggles target. And sometimes like you'll have a Johnny's Primate that's huge, but they'll have an Ethereal Armor on a guy that will first strike down your Johnny's Primate, and this way you can Pay No Heed and then block them, and then usually kill them, as they're not dealing any damage, and your huge Johnny's Primate has to deal damage back. Or just if they have like if they attack in and you want to keep your life total at 40 or 30 for your Sarah's Ascendants, you can use Pay No Heed on that turn and prevent all that damage that the card that's swinging in does, and then you can keep your Sarah's Ascendants as 6/6 flyers, and sometimes that will be the difference because they're planning on gaining life with their card, and they'll gain no life, and they're planning on doing damage to take you below 30. And yeah, so I'm going to keep the Pay No Heeds. Pay No Heeds is also very good against Scape Shift. Scape Shift, it will get rid of half of the triggers. So basically, if they have two Valakits out, you Pay No Heed on one of the Valakit, and all those triggers go bye-bye. And a lot of times that's like 16 or 15 damage, 15 or 18 damage you absorb, and the other 15 or 18 damage goes through, but you're still usually at like a healthy 12. So I am going to keep the Martyr in right now. Martyr might come out for another Auric Champion main board or something else, but I think that the right line of play that we're going to do, what we're going to add in the sideboard, is I've had Brimaz in the sideboard at one point versus UWR control, and he's also not terrible against the junk, but I think what we're going to do is we're going to add 2 Wrath of Gods in the sideboard, and this will give us some more outs versus junk. And you could go like an Oblivion Ring is fine. There's plenty of things that you could bring in versus those, but it's like Wrath of Gods. It works hand in hand with Return of the Ranks. And so we have one more card on the side, and usually I think that we're going to go Stony Silence as our last one, and really hate out the Tron deck that I do think that we're going to see a lot of. And against Tron, it's very pivotal to find that Stony Silence to lock down all of their artifacts. What Stony Silence does against Tron is it makes it so they can't activate their Expedition map, they can't activate all of their chromatic spheres, I think is what it's called, or the chromatic stars. And then it gets them stuck to be able to not assemble Tron as quickly or not find that extra red or green mana that they usually need to take out your enchantments or whatnot. So we could either go Stony Silence or we could go Leyline of Sanctity. Leyline of Sanctity, I don't know if it hits too many things right now. I mean, it does hit Scapeshift, but Scapeshift usually just runs Cryptic Command to bounce it. So if you have a Leyline of Sanctity, all it does is to delay the inevitable. And against Scapeshift, you really need to provide as much aggression as possible against Scapeshift. And the Leyline of Sanctity just does not do the job. We could actually even put in like Ruined Halo is another card. I'll show you these cards as I bring them up. There's Ruined Halo. That's not too bad of a card. As this card says, as Ruined Halo enters the battlefield, name a card, you have protection from the chosen card. So you can actually name the Valakut, but again, I think Ruined Halo is a little more versatile than Leyline of Sanctity because you can do the same thing. You name Valakut and against the Scapeshift match, against like same thing against Through the Breach, you'd name Valakut. I mean, they still kill you with Emrakul and the Primeval Titan, but at least you could save yourself a few turns for backswing or finding like your Wrath of Gods or Path to Exiles for the Primeval Titan. You can run Ghostly Prison, so that's another card that's very hard for the Splinter Twin decks to play around as Suppression Field because it makes all activations cost 2 more. But again, you can run Sunlance. I'll show you what Sunlance. Sunlance is a pretty decent, and this could be your like 5th Path to Exile. Sunlance says deals 3 damage to target non-white creature. It's kind of a lightning bolt, but it can only deal damage to non-white creatures, not players. You could run another land, go to 22, but again, Brimaz is another card that you could run. Brimaz, King of Ereskos. You could run another Suppression Field would be fine. I've had Blind Obedience in the sideboard before. Blind Obedience is actually pretty decent against the Junk and the Splinter Twin decks. And I think that's what I'm going to go for here. For this particular, you should never be stale with your Soul Sisters deck. Like if I turn my webcam, I'd show you my binder. I have like a Soul Sisters sideboard binder, and I have a lot of cards that I can put in against particular matchups that I think will be problematic. And so when I go to a tournament, I can just kind of scout the field and use my intuition to try to determine what people are going to be playing, what matchups I'm going to see, and then I can adjust accordingly. One other card that you could easily put in the sideboard is Rest in Peace, and we might need to do that if like the Golgari Grave Troll techs are going to be a thing, that we have access to Rest in Peace. But for now, I'm going to go Blind Obedience. I think Blind Obedience gives me this is also another card that's not too shabby against the Tron, because it makes their Wormcoil Engine come into play tapped, which means you can attack in that pivotable turn. And then it also allows, against Tron, their artifacts come into play tapped so they can't activate them immediately, like the Expedition map. And this also works against Splinter Twin. Junk, it's not too bad either. Blind Obedience is pretty decent versus the Junk matchup because their Siege Rhinos and Goistwall come into play tapped, which can sometimes be the difference of you attacking in or not for that extra damage. Any sort of haste deck, Blind Obedience is fine, but the cool thing about Blind Obedience against UWR is the extort actually can be a factor. Some of the times you can get the UWR control decks down pretty low, and then it's hard to finish them off because they just play so much control. And that makes all of your cards basically 1 damage spells later on, and which can be significant versus the deck. So again, any sort of hasty deck, Blind Obedience does affect Vengevine if Vengevine decks become big either. So you have a lot of options. Again, we're going to wait and see if Squad Hawks are the right play to bring in or not. Again, usually if I bring in the Squadron Hawks, it's going to be one Martyr that comes out, one Soul Ward, and most likely the Arctic Champions will need to go to the sideboard. Or you can put like a Ranger. Sometimes I've cut a Ranger. But Ranger right now I just think is so good in the metagame, so I'm going to keep it in. And again, you have a lot of options in the sideboard. So we'll just dink around with this a while, see if we need to put Rest in Peace, see if we need Squadron Hawks, and we'll call this good for now. So I'm going to play some games and see how well this Soul Sisters build takes us. This has been Kevin with RogueDeckBuilder.com. Thanks for watching.